My parents gave my sister their house, but the deed had a surprise. Signature, Chapter 1. The return. The Portland rain fell in gentle sheets against the windshield of Caleb Morgan's rental car as he drove through the familiar streets of his hometown. At 35, he hadn't expected to be back here, not like this anyway. His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as he approached the old neighborhood. Each street sign, a memory he'd tried to outrun for the past decade. Caleb caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, dark circles under thoughtful hazel eyes, 3-day stubble framing a tense jawline, and brown hair that curled slightly at the temples where the first hints of gray had begun to appear. He looked tired, but then again, a 6-hour flight, followed by immediate family drama, would do that to anyone. His phone buzzed with another text from his mother. "Please come soon, honey, your father's not taking this well." As Caleb pulled up to his parents' modest hotel, the contrast struck him hard. For 40 years, David and Lynn Morgan had lived in that beautiful Craftsman on Laurel Street, the house where Caleb had learned to ride a bike, where he'd had his heart broken for the first time, where he'd packed his bags and left after that final explosive argument with his father. And now, somehow, they were living out of suitcases at the Evergreen Inn. Lynn Morgan was waiting in the lobby, her petite frame seeming smaller than Caleb remembered. At 65, she still maintained her shoulder-length silver hair in a neat bob, her clothes simple but immaculate despite the circumstances. When she saw her son, her face crumpled with relief. "Oh, Caleb," she whispered, pulling him into a tight embrace that smelled of the same lavender perfume she'd worn his entire life. "Thank you for coming." "Of course I came, Mum," he said, his voice rough with emotion he hadn't expected to feel so quickly. "Where's Dad?" Lynn gestured toward the small hotel cafe, pretending to read the newspaper and refusing to discuss anything. David Morgan sat rigidly at a corner table, his once commanding presence diminished in the unfamiliar setting. At 6, his broad shoulders were slightly stooped, but his silver hair was still thick, and his piercing blue eyes, the same eyes he'd passed to Rachel, missed nothing. When he spotted his son, his expression flickered between surprise, relief, and stubborn pride. "You didn't need to fly all the way out here," he said gruffly as Caleb approached, folding the newspaper with deliberate care. "We've got it handled." Caleb slid into the seat across from his father. "Living in a hotel doesn't look like handled to me, Dad." "It's temporary," David insisted. "David," Lynn interrupted gently, "please, let's not start this way." She turned to Caleb, her fingers nervously twisting her wedding band. "Your sister hasn't returned our calls in 3 days." Caleb clenched his jaw. "And chased that man," David muttered, a rare flash of anger darkening his features. "Standing there in my house, the house I built a life in, telling me I had 24 hours to clear out my belongings." "Tell me exactly what happened," Caleb said, leaning forward. From the beginning, Lynn and David exchanged a glance, laden with shared regret. "We thought we were doing the right thing," Lynn began. "Rachel has always loved that house, and with us getting older, we decided to transfer it to her. A gift, we thought. Something to secure her future. And to thank her for staying close," David added, a comment that hung in the air between them. The implication was clear. "Unlike Caleb, who had left, we signed the papers last month," Lynn continued. "Rachel and Chase took us to dinner to celebrate. Everything seemed fine until 3 days ago when Chase showed up with some legal papers." David's hand tightened around his coffee mug. "Said the house was in their name now, and they needed the space for investment purposes. Whatever the hell that means." "Dad, I need to see those papers," Caleb said. The designer in him automatically looking for details, for the fine print everyone else had missed. "Already called Maya about it," David said, referring to Caleb's ex-girlfriend. "She's still at Johnston and Hayes, made partner last year. Said she'd look into it." The mention of Maya sent an unexpected jolt through Caleb's system. They hadn't spoken since the breakup 7 years ago. "Maya agreed to help you?" Caleb asked, surprised. Lynn reached across the table and covered Caleb's hand with her own. "She said she'd do it for us, honey. And ... well, she asked about you." A server approached their table, breaking the moment. "Can I get you folks anything else?" "Just the check, please," David said, his voice tight with the humiliation of being a guest rather than a host, as they gathered their things to head up to his parents' room. Caleb felt a familiar determination settle in his chest. The same feeling that had driven him to succeed in a competitive field when everyone said he couldn't make it as a designer. He might have been the son who left, but he was also the son who knew how to fight. "I'm going to fix this," he promised, his voice quiet but firm. "Whatever it takes." The evening stretched long as they reviewed what little documentation his parents had kept. Around midnight, with his parents finally asleep in the hotel room's queen bed, Caleb stood at the window overlooking Portland's glittering skyline. He pulled out his phone and, after a moment's hesitation, typed a message to the contact he'd never deleted but hadn't used in years. "Maya, it's Caleb, I'm in town. Can we meet tomorrow about my parents' situation? I need to see those papers." Her reply came faster than he expected. "Corner table calf. 9 a.m. Bring coffee, remember how I take it." Caleb found himself smiling for the first time since he'd landed. Yes, he remembered double espresso, splash of almond milk, no sugar. Some things you never forget. He turned back to look at his sleeping parents, a protective instinct surging through him. Rachel and Chase had no idea what was coming. If you're feeling the tension building in this family drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens when Caleb meets his ex-girlfriend turned lawyer in the next chapter and discovers the surprising detail that could change everything. Plus, leave a comment below sharing a time when family disappointed you, or if you've ever had to step up and be the hero your family needed. New chapters every Thursday. Chapter 2, The Discovery. The corner table calf hadn't changed in the 7 years since Caleb had last been there. The same mismatched vintage chairs, the same chalkboard menu with its ever-rotating seasonal specials, the same rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans. It had been their places and Maya's back when they were planning a future together. Caleb arrived 15 minutes early, securing their old favorite spot by the window. He ordered her coffee, exactly as she liked it, and waited, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. When the bell above the door chimed, he looked up, and his practiced composure slipped. Maya Chen walked in like she owned the place, her confident stride unchanged by the years. At 34, she had grown into her power in a way that made heads turn. Her long black hair was now cut into a sleek bob that framed her face perfectly, highlighting her sharp cheekbones and intelligent dark eyes. She wore a charcoal pantsuit with subtle emerald earrings, her birthstone. Caleb remembered the only hint of sentimentality in her otherwise pragmatic appearance. She spotted him immediately, her professional mask flickering briefly to reveal something softer before she reinforced her boundaries. Maya approached the table, sliding into the seat across from him with practiced ease. "Caleb Morgan," she said, her voice a careful blend of professional distance and familiar warmth. "Still punctual, I see." He pushed her coffee toward her. "Still. Remember how you take your coffee? I see." Maya took a sip and closed her eyes briefly. Points for accuracy. When she opened them again, her gaze was all business. "Your parents' situation is a mess. Tell me something I don't know," Caleb said, leaning forward. "What did those papers actually say?" Maya reached into her leather portfolio and extracted a folder. "I've reviewed everything. The deed transfer, the supplementary documents, everything. Your father could provide." She laid out several papers on the table. "On the surface, it's straightforward. Your parents transferred ownership of the property to Rachel. But here's where it gets complicated." She pointed to a signature line on one of the documents. "Chase's name is on everything, listed as Your parents say they understood the house was going to Rachel as a gift, and legally, they signed over their property to both Rachel and Chase, with rights of survivorship." Maya's finger traced a clause. "The problem is, there's language here about consideration, essentially stating that in exchange for the property, Rachel and Chase would provide care and housing for your parents for the remainder of their lives." Caleb's brow furrowed. So they broke the contract by kicking my parents out. It would appear so, Maya said. But Chase is claiming your parents violated the terms, first by being, quote, impossible to live with. He's arguing that the care agreement was predicated on a harmonious living arrangement. That's bullshit, Caleb snapped, drawing glances from nearby tables. He lowered his voice. My parents wouldn't have been difficult. This was their home. Maya's expression softened slightly. I believe you, Caleb, but legally, it's their word against Chase's. Unless, unless what? Unless we find something concrete that proves Chase's intentions were never honorable. She hesitated, tucking a strand of hair behind her, a gesture so familiar it made Caleb's chest ache with unexpected nostalgia. I need to ask you something. Personal. Was there ever any tension between your father and Chase? Anything that might suggest a motive? Caleb leaned back in his chair, memories flooding back. Dad never liked him, thought he was too slick, too focused on appearances. Chase is in real estate development, always talking about property values, market opportunities. Looking back, he asked a lot of questions about the house, the neighborhood. Portland property values have skyrocketed in this area, Maya noted. That craftsman could be worth close to $1 million now, especially with the character features your mum always talked about. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. So you think this was Chase's plan all along? Get my sister to convince my parents to sign over the house, then force them out so he could sell it? Redevelop the land. It's a theory, Maya said cautiously. But we need more. I'm still going through all the paperwork. She turned a page in the document, then stopped suddenly. Her finger hovered over a signature line, her expression changing. Caleb, look at this. He leaned forward to see where she was pointing. There, in the corner of a supplementary document attached to the deed document regarding property improvements and historical designations, was a signature. Not his father's or mother's or Rachel's, but his own name, scrawled in what appeared to be his handwriting. I never signed this, he said, confusion giving way to anger. I wasn't even in the state when this transfer happened. Maya's eyes gleamed with the intensity that had made her such a formidable law student years ago. That's forgery, Caleb, and it changes everything. But why would they forge my signature on this specific document? Maya was already scanning the text surrounding the signature. This addendum relates to the historical designation of the property. It states that all living heirs with potential interest in the property waive their rights to contest any future development decisions. She looked up, understanding, dawning. They needed your signature because, without it, you could potentially block certain types of renovation or redevelopment based on the historical nature of the home. So Chase forged my signature to clear the way for whatever he's planning to do with the house, Caleb said, the pieces falling into place. We don't know for certain that Chase did this, Maya cautioned, ever the careful attorney. But this is a serious legal issue. Forgery on a real estate document is criminal. Caleb stared at the fake signature, anger building inside him. What's our next move? We need more evidence, Maya said, already gathering the papers. I'll file for an emergency injunction to prevent any changes to the property while we investigate. But Caleb, she added, her professional demeanor slipping just enough to show genuine concern, this might get ugly. Are you prepared for what this could do to your relationship with Rachel? The question hung between them, weighted with implications beyond just the current crisis. There had been a time when Maya knew everything about Caleb's complicated relationship with his sister, the rivalry, the resentment, the moments of genuine connection that made the betrayals hurt all the more. Rachel made her choice, Caleb said finally. She chose Chase, and she chose to stand by while our parents were thrown out of their own home. Whatever happens next is on her. Maya nodded, but her eyes held a knowing sadness. Things are rarely that simple with family, and you know it. As they prepared to leave, Maya paused, her professional armor momentarily lowered. It's good to see you, Caleb. Despite the circumstances, he allowed himself to really look at her, then at the woman who had once been his future, before his Ambitions and her dedication to building her career in Portland had pulled them in different directions. "It's good to see you too, Maya. Thank you for helping." "I'm not doing it for you," she said with a small smile that softened her words. "I'm doing it because your mum makes the best apple pie in Oregon, and I refuse to let some slick real estate developer rob the world of that gift." For the first time since arriving back in Portland, Caleb laughed. It was brief, but genuine. "Still have your priorities straight, I see." As they walked out into the cool Portland morning, Caleb felt something he hadn't expected. Not just determination to right a wrong, but a flicker of something that felt dangerously like coming home. Chapter 3. The confrontation. Laurel Street was exactly as Caleb remembered. It tree-lined peaceful, with craftsman homes that spoke of Portland's architectural heritage. The Morgan family home stood in the middle of the block, its deep blue exterior with white trim and covered porch as familiar to Caleb as his own reflection. His father had repainted it that color the summer before Caleb left for college, the two of them working side by side in rare harmony. Now, standing across the street, Caleb felt like an intruder in his own history. A luxury SUV chases, no doubt, sat in the driveway where his father's trusty pickup truck had always been parked. The porch swing where his mother had read to him on summer evenings was gone, replaced by sleek, modern outdoor furniture that looked like it belonged in a catalog, not in the home where he'd grown up. "You sure you want to do this now?" Maya asked, standing beside him with the folder of legal documents tucked under her arm. "We could serve them formally through a courier." Caleb shook his head. "I need to see her face when she finds out what we know." They crossed the street together, their footsteps in sync as they approached the front walk. Before they reached the porch, the front door opened, and Rachel Morgan Whitman stepped out, as if she'd been watching for them through the bay window. The same window where their mother had always kept her prized orchids. Now, conspicuously empty. At 33, Rachel remained striking tall and slender with their father's ice blue eyes and blonde hair, styled in an expensive cut that framed her heart-shaped face. She wore white linen pants and a cashmere sweater in a soft blue that matched the house trim, looking every bit the successful interior designer she'd become. For a moment, Caleb saw a flicker of the little sister who had once followed him everywhere, begging to be included in his adventures. Then her expression hardened. "Caleb," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "I wondered when you'd show up." "Hello?" "Rachel," he replied, climbing the porch steps. "Nice of you to make time in your busy schedule to see me. Especially since you haven't been answering Mum and Dad's calls." Rachel's perfect composure wavered slightly. "It's complicated, Caleb. You wouldn't understand. You haven't been here." "I understand perfectly," Caleb countered. "I understand that our parents are living in a hotel because you and Chase kicked them out of their own home. They gave us this house," Rachel said, defensive now. "It was a gift. If they're having regrets, that's not on us." Maya stepped forward, her professional presence impossible to ignore. "Ms. Morgan Whitman, I'm Maya Chen, representing your parents in this matter. I believe we've met at community fundraisers." Recognition dawned in Rachel's eyes. "You're Caleb's ex." "I'm your parents' attorney," Maya corrected smoothly. "And we have some serious concerns about the property transfer that I believe would be best discussed inside. Unless you'd prefer to have this conversation where the neighbors can hear." Rachel hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door wider. "Fine. Chase is on a conference call in his office. Let's talk in the living room." Caleb stepped inside and was hit with a wave of disorienting familiarity overlaid with jarring changes. The entryway, where his mother's antique console table had stood, now featured a minimalist bench. The living room beyond had been completely redecorated, the comfortable worn furniture replaced with modern pieces in a neutral palette. The family photos gone. The bookshelves that had been packed with his father's history books now displaying artful arrangements of decorative objects. "What have you done to this place?" Caleb asked, unable to keep the shock from his voice. Rachel crossed her arms defensively. "We updated it. The decor was dated, Caleb. Chase and I have different tastes, clearly," Caleb muttered, noticing that even the fireplace mantel, where their Christmas stockings had hung every year, had been stripped of character, replaced with a sleek slab of marble. Maya smoothly redirected the conversation, taking a seat on one of the new chairs and opening her folder. Ms. Morgan Whitman, we've reviewed the DAG transfer and supporting documentation, and we've identified some serious legal concerns. Rachel perched on the edge of the sofa across from them. What concerns? Everything was handled by Chase's attorney. It was all above board, was it? Caleb asked, remaining standing, too agitated to sit in this strange version of his family home. Was forging my signature above board, Rachel? Her face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Maya extracted the document with Caleb's forged signature and placed it on the glass coffee table between them. This addendum regarding historical property designations contains what appears to be Caleb Morgan's signature. However, Mr. Morgan was in Seattle at the time this document was signed and did not authorize anyone to sign on his behalf. Rachel stared at the paper, her composure cracking. Chase handled the paperwork. I didn't know, or didn't want to know, Caleb pressed. You weren't here, Caleb. Rachel suddenly burst out, her careful facade crumbling. You left. You left me to deal with everything, with Dad's expectations, with Mum's disappointment when you barely called. You got to start fresh while I stayed, and tried to be enough for both of us. The raw emotion in her voice caught Caleb off guard. For a moment, he saw the hurt beneath her polished exterior, the little sister who had once idolized him, who had cried for days when he left for college, and again when he moved across the country. This isn't about me leaving Rachel, he said, his voice quieter now. This is about our parents being thrown out of their home after they trusted you. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Chase said we'd all live here together at first, that we'd convert the basement into a suite for them. But then he started talking about renovations, about how having them here was delaying our plans. What plans? Maya asked sharply. Before Rachel could answer, the sound of a door opening down the hall caught their attention. Chase Whitman strode into the living room, his confident gait faltering only slightly at the sight of the unexpected visitors. At 40, he embodied the successful businessman image he cultivated, tall and fit, with perfectly styled dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples. Wearing a tailored button-down and designer jeans that suggested casual affluence. Rachel, honey, I didn't realize we had company, he said. His smile not reaching his eyes as they flicked from Caleb to Maya, immediately assessing the threat they posed. Hello, Chase, Caleb said coldly. We were just discussing forgery and real estate fraud. Care to join the conversation? Chase's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. I see someone's been filling your head with nonsense. Rachel, why don't you make some coffee for our guests while I clear this up? She's not going anywhere, Caleb said, stepping slightly in front of his sister in a protective gesture that surprised even him. And neither are you until we get some answers. Chase's affable mask slipped, revealing the calculated ambition beneath. You want answers? Fine. Your parents gave us this house because Rachel deserved it. She stayed. She was the good child, while you ran off to play artist in Seattle. Graphic designer, Caleb corrected automatically. Whatever, Chase dismissed. With a wave of his hand, the point is, this house is legally ours now. If your parents are having second thoughts, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the facts. Maya stood up, her petite frame somehow commanding the room. Mr. Whitman, the facts include a forged signature on a legal document, which constitutes fraud. Additionally, the deed transfer included clear provisions for your in-laws' continued residence in this home. Chase's confidence wavered for just a moment before he recovered. That was contingent on a workable living arrangement, which became impossible when David started interfering with our renovation plans. What renovation plans? Caleb demanded. A flash of something triumph perhaps crossed Chase's face before he could hide it. This neighborhood is being rezoned for mixed-use development. This lot, with its corner position, is perfect for a small luxury condo building. 6 units, high-end finishes, excellent return on investment. The room fell silent. As his words sank in, Rachel stared at her husband in shock. "You're planning to tear down my parents' home?" Caleb asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Our home," Chase corrected. "And yes, that's the long-term plan. This house is charming but outdated. The real value is in the land." "You knew," Rachel whispered, looking at her husband with dawning horror. "You knew all along this was what you wanted to do." Chase turned to her, irritation flashing across his face. "Of course I knew, Rachel, we discussed this. The development potential is why we wanted this property in the first place." "No," Rachel shook her head, backing away from him. "You said we'd renovate. You said we'd make it our forever home. You never mentioned tearing it down." "I said what?" "You needed to hear to get your parents to sign the papers," Chase said dismissively. "It's business, Rachel. Don't be naive." The casual cruelty of his admission hung in the air. Rachel's face crumpled, years of blind trust shattering in an instant. Cleared her throat, breaking the tense silence. "Mr. Whitman, I've already filed for an emergency injunction to prevent any alterations to this property while we investigate the legal issues. Additionally, I'll be submitting evidence of potential forgery to the district attorney's office for review." Chase's confident facade finally cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. "You have no proof that I forged anything." "Maybe not yet," Caleb said, stepping forward. "But I'm willing to bet if we look closer at all the paperwork, we'll find more discrepancies. People who commit fraud rarely do it just once." Chase straightened his shoulders, switching tactics. "You know what? Take it to court. It'll be years before anything's resolved. In the meantime, this house remains in our names. Your parents will spend their retirement fighting a legal battle they can't afford." Rachel made a small, pained sound, like something breaking inside her. Then, to everyone's surprise, she walked to the antique secretary desk in the corner, one of the few original pieces of furniture remaining, and pulled out a key from a hidden compartment that Caleb had forgotten existed. "Mum showed me this hiding place when I was 12, she said quietly, holding up the key. "It's for the safe deposit box at First Portland Bank, the one where Dad keeps all his important papers." She looked directly at Chase, her voice steadying. "Including the original deed to this house, which I'm betting has different terms than the copies your lawyer provided." Chase's face drained of color. "Rachel, don't be stupid. Think about what you're doing." "I am thinking," she said, walking over to hand the key to Maya. "For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly." She turned to Caleb, tears streaming down her face now. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was planning to tear it down. I would never have agreed to that." Caleb wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the betrayal. But the sister, he remembered, the one who had helped him build blanket forts, in this very room, who had bandaged his scraped knees when he fell from the oak tree in the backyard, was standing before him. Broken and remorseful. "I believe you," he said finally. "But this doesn't fix what happened to Mum and Dad." Rachel nodded, wiping at her tears. "I know, but maybe it's a start." Chase looked between them, calculating his options and finding them limited. "This is ridiculous. You're throwing away everything for a house." "No," Rachel said, turning to face her husband. "I'm choosing my family over someone who was willing to use me to get what he wanted. I think you should leave, Chase." "This isn't over," Chase warned, grabbing his keys from the entry table. "You'll regret this, Rachel." After he stormed out, the house fell into a heavy silence. Rachel sank onto the sofa, looking lost in her own home. "What have I done?" she whispered. "What have I let happen?" Caleb sat beside her, the anger that had sustained him for days giving way to something more complicated. "You made a mistake, a big one. But you're trying to fix it now." Maya watched them, her expression softening. "The key to the safe deposit box could be crucial. If there are discrepancies between the original deed and the version that was filed, we have a much stronger case." Rachel looked up at them, her eyes red but determined. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I want Mum and Dad to come home. As the afternoon light filtered through the windows of the house that had seen generations of Morgan family history, Caleb realized that recovering the physical home was only part of the battle. Rebuilding the trust that had been broken between siblings, between parents and children, would be the harder task. But for the first time, it felt possible. Chapter 4. The Reconciliation. The First Portland Bank stood in the heart of downtown, its Art Deco facade a testament to the city's history. Inside, the modern banking floor contrasted with the vintage architectural details preserved from the 1920s. Caleb, Maya, and Rachel waited in uncomfortable silence as the bank manager located the Morgan family's safe deposit box. "Dad's had this box since before I was born," Rachel said quietly. "He used to bring me here sometimes, said it was important to know where the family papers were kept." Caleb nodded, remembering similar visits. "He brought me to, called it man business, and made it feel like some sacred ritual." A small shared smile passed between them, the first genuine moment of connection since Caleb's return. The bank manager returned with the long metal box and led them to a private viewing room. Once alone, Rachel inserted the key with trembling hands, turning it alongside the manager's key. The lid opened to reveal meticulously organized folders, each labeled in their father's precise handwriting. Maya pulled on latex gloves she'd brought expressly for this purpose. "May I?" she asked, and Rachel nodded. With careful precision, Maya extracted the folder, labeled House, Laurel Street, and opened it on the table. Inside were the original deed, the mortgage documents from when their parents first purchased the home 30 years ago, insurance papers, and at the very back, a sealed envelope labeled Property Transfer 2024. "This would be it," Maya said, carefully opening the envelope. The documents inside looked similar to the ones they'd reviewed, but as Maya laid them side by side with the copies she'd brought, the differences became apparent. "The language is completely different," Maya noted, her finger tracing specific clauses. "This original document explicitly states that the property transfer is contingent upon your parents having lifetime rights to reside in the home. It also specifies that any major structural changes require written consent from both your parents during their lifetime. And there's no mention of Chase as Kona," Caleb observed, leaning closer. "Rachel is listed as the sole recipient." Rachel's face paled. "The papers I signed, ... Chase brought them home. He said they were identical to what we'd reviewed with his lawyer, just the final versions." She buried her face in her hands. "I didn't even read them. I trusted him." Maya carefully documented everything with her phone, creating a detailed photographic record. "The original notary stamp and signatures here don't match the filed documents. This is textbook fraud." "So what happens now?" Rachel asked, looking between Maya and Caleb. "Now we have evidence," Maya said, her professional confidence solid and reassuring. "I'll file amended documents with the county recorder's office and notify the district attorney about the forgery and fraud. Given the evidence, we can petition for immediate restoration of your parents' rights to the property." As they gathered the documents and prepared to leave, Rachel hesitated. "Caleb, there's something else." She reached back into the safe deposit box and pulled out a smaller envelope. "This is for you. Dad put it here years ago, after you left." Caleb accepted the envelope, his name written in his father's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single keyhole, and slightly tarnished, to a braided leather keychain that Caleb recognized immediately. He'd made it in summer camp. When he was 12, "What is this?" he asked, though something in him already knew. "It's the key to your studio," Rachel said quietly. "The space above the garage that Dad converted for you when you started art school. He never changed it back, you know. All your old drawings, your first drafts, they're still there. He wouldn't let Mum touch anything." Caleb stared at the key, a flood of memories washing over him. Arguments with his father about pursuing art instead of business. The bitter words exchanged, the ultimatums. "I always thought he hated what I chose to do." "He didn't understand it," Rachel corrected gently, "but he never hated it. He kept every magazine you were published in, every award announcement." There's a scrapbook. Caleb closed his hand around the key, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. I'd like to see it. The studio, I mean. As they left the bank, the three of them moved with new purpose. The evidence they'd found was more than just legal ammunition. It was a path forward, a way to heal what had been broken. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the backyard as Caleb climbed the familiar wooden stairs to the studio above the garage. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if it had been regularly maintained despite years of disuse. The space inside was frozen in time, his drafting table still positioned by the window. To catch the northern light, his old sketches pinned to corkboards, art books arranged on shelves his father had built by hand. A layer of dust covered everything, but otherwise, it could have been yesterday that he'd stormed out. Vowing never to return, he moved through the space slowly, rediscovering pieces of himself in each item: the ambitious kid who'd dreamed of designing album covers, the college student struggling to find his voice, the young man torn between roots and wings. On the far wall hung his first professional project, the logo design for a local coffee chain that had since expanded nationwide. Beside it, in a simple frame, was the check he'd received for the work, uncashed. He was so proud of that. Came a voice from the doorway. Caleb turned to find his father standing there, looking uncertain about whether to enter what had once been sacred space between them. "Dad," Caleb said, surprised. "How did you know we'd be here?" David Morgan stepped into the studio, his hands in his pockets, a gesture Caleb suddenly realized he'd inherited. "Rachel called, told us everything." He looked around the space, eyes lingering on projects from years past. "Your mother and I are downstairs, she's making tea." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, years of unspoken words creating an almost physical barrier. Caleb ran his fingers along the edge of his old drafting table, gathering dust. "You kept it all," he finally said. "I always thought you'd turn this into storage or something." David's weathered face softened slightly. "Couldn't bring myself to change it. Kept thinking, maybe someday, ... Someday I'd come back," Caleb finished. David nodded, moving further into the room. He stopped at the framed check on the wall. "Your first big client. I remember how excited you were." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Couldn't stop talking about it at dinner." "You told me it wouldn't last," Caleb said, the old hurt rising. Despite his efforts to keep it contained, said graphic design was a fad, that I'd end up crawling back when it fell through. David's shoulders sagged. "I was wrong." The admission seemed to cost him something. "You proved me wrong, son. Built a career I didn't understand, but..." He gestured to a stack of magazines on a shelf, industry publications featuring Caleb's work. "I followed it anyway." Caleb stared at his father, seeing for the first time the pride mixed with regret in the older man's eyes. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Call me something?" "Same reason you didn't, I expect," David said, meeting his son's gaze. "Pride, stubbornness." He sighed heavily. "Morgan family traits, for better or worse." A creak on the stairs announced Rachel's arrival. She hovered in the doorway, uncertain of her welcome in this moment between father and son. "Mum sent me up," she said softly, "the tea's getting cold." David turned to his daughter, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Rachel took it, allowing herself to be drawn into the studio. "Your brother and I were just reminiscing." "Fighting, you mean?" Rachel asked with a tentative smile. "Some things never change." "Not fighting," Caleb corrected, just ... clearing the air. David looked between his children, the son, who'd left to forge his own path, and the daughter who'd stayed but lost herself along the way. "I owe you both an apology," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "I pushed too hard, expected too much. Made you feel like you had to earn your place instead of just ... having it." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I let you down, Dad. Let everyone down. I should have known what Chase was planning." "You trusted the man you married," David said gently. "That's not a crime, sweetheart. But the house is just a house. David interrupted. Your mother and I care more about having both our children back than any building. He turned to Caleb, though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to sleeping in my own bed again. A laugh, tentative but real, escaped Caleb. Maya thinks we have a solid case. The evidence from the safe deposit box is pretty damning. That young woman always was sharp as a tack, David said with approval. Should have held on to her son. Dad, Caleb warned, though without real heat. Just saying, David raised his hands. In surrender. Now, your mother's waiting, and if there's one thing I've learned in 40 years of marriage, it's that you don't let Lynn Morgan's tea get cold. As they descended the stairs together, Caleb felt something shift inside him. A weight he'd carried for years beginning to lift. The house still needed to be reclaimed, the legal battles fought. But something more valuable had already been recovered. The family within these walls. In the kitchen. Lynn Morgan was arranging cookies on a plate, homemade chocolate chip, Caleb's favorite since childhood. When she saw the three of them enter together, her eyes widened with hopeful surprise. Well, she said, her voice wavering slightly. This is a sight I've waited a long time to see. And as they gathered around the kitchen table that had hosted thousands of family meals, the late afternoon sunlight streaming through windows that had witnessed both celebrations and sorrows, Caleb understood that while the battle for the house had brought him home, it was the people inside it that would make him stay. Chapter 5. The resolution. 3 months later. The Morgan family home stood transformed once again, not by Chase's luxury renovation plans, but by the simple return of what belonged there. David's beloved leather recliner had reclaimed its spot by the fireplace. Lynn's collection of family photos lined the mantel once more. The vintage dining table, where decades of holiday meals had been shared, gleamed with fresh polish in the morning light. Caleb stood on the front porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the neighborhood come alive. With Saturday morning activity, the legal proceedings had moved surprisingly quickly once the evidence of fraud was presented. Chase now faced criminal charges, and the civil case had been settled with a decisive judgment in the Morgans' favor. The screen door creaked open behind him, and Maya stepped out, her own coffee steaming in the cool autumn air. In the months since their reunion at the corner table cafe, their professional relationship had gradually evolved, old wounds healing alongside new understanding. Your mother's making pancakes, she said, leaning against the porch railing beside him. Blueberry. She sent me out here to fetch that son of mine before they get cold. Caleb smiled. Some things never change. And some things do, Maya replied, her dark eyes meeting his with a warmth that had been rekindled gradually over shared legal briefs and late-night strategy sessions. Inside, the sounds of family breakfast preparations created a comfortable symphony. His father's deep laugh, his mother's gentle scolding, Rachel's voice animatedly describing her latest project. After the divorce filing, Rachel had moved temporarily into her old bedroom, using the time to rediscover who she was, apart from Chase's influence. She'd recently launched her own interior design firm, specializing in honoring the character of Portland's historic homes while updating them for modern living. The closing arguments for Chase's case are next week, Maya said, professional even in this moment of calm. The prosecutor is confident. With the forgery evidence and the bank records showing, he'd already been in talks with developers before the property transfer. It's over, Maya, Caleb said gently. We won. The house is back in my parents' names, with provisions for Rachel and me as future inheritors, exactly as it should have been all along. Maya nodded, allowing herself to relax. You're right. I just keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Occupational hazard of being an excellent attorney, Caleb teased. He hesitated, then added more seriously, thank you for everything you did for my family. They're my clients, she said automatically, then smiled. But they're also good people who deserved better than what happened to them. The screen door opened again, and Rachel emerged, flower dusting her casual weekend attire. Mum says if you two don't come in right now, She's giving your pancakes to Mrs. Abernathy's dog. Mrs. Abernathy still has that yappy little terrier? Caleb asked, surprised. Third generation of yappy terriers, Rachel confirmed with a grin. Some neighborhood traditions are sacred. As they moved to head inside, Rachel caught Caleb's arm. Hey, I wanted to tell you something before we join the pancake madness. Her expression grew serious. I signed the lease yesterday. For the apartment? On Hawthorne. That's great, Rach, Caleb said sincerely. It's a great location for your business and for me, she added. I need to stand on my own for a while. Figure out who Rachel Morgan is again. She glanced toward the studio above the garage where light had been burning late into the night, as Caleb worked on a new project. What about you? Seattle must be missing its star designer by now. Caleb looked through the window at his parents, moving in comfortable tandem around the kitchen. I've been talking to some Portland agencies, actually. Turns out remote work has its advantages. I can base myself here and still maintain my Seattle clients. Rachel's eyes widened. You're staying? For good? Thinking about it, Caleb admitted. I found a place not far from here. Close enough for Sunday dinners, but far enough for independence. Mum will be ecstatic, Rachel said, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. And Maya, is she part of this decision? Caleb felt a flush rise to his cheeks. We're figuring things out, taking it slow. Well, figure it out faster, Rachel advised with the frankness only a sister could employ. That woman has been in love with you since you were both 22. Everyone sees it but you. Before Caleb could respond, Lynn's voice called from inside. These pancakes are getting cold, and I'm not above giving them to the neighbor's dog. The siblings exchanged a look of shared amusement at their mother's familiar threat and headed inside to join their family. Later that afternoon, as David and Lynn napped in their reclaimed bedroom, and Rachel had gone to meet with a potential client, Caleb and Maya sat in the backyard beneath the sprawling oak tree that had been his childhood castle. Spaceship and refuge. I have something for you, Caleb said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. Maya accepted it with curious eyes. What's this? Open it. Inside was a key attached to a simple silver keychain. It's to my new place, Caleb explained, suddenly nervous. The renovated warehouse on River Street. I sign the final papers next week. Maya looked at the key, then at him, her expression unreadable. Caleb, it's not what you think, he said quickly. Or maybe it is, but not how you think. I'm not asking you to move in, or anything that dramatic. I just, ... He paused, gathering his thoughts. When I left Portland, I was running away from everything: my father's disapproval, my own uncertainty, even us. Maya's fingers closed around the key. We were so young. We were, Caleb agreed, and we both had things we needed to accomplish on our own. But being back here, working with you these past months, it's made me realize something. What's that? Maya asked softly. That sometimes the path forward means circling back to what matters most, Caleb said. I'm not the same person who left, and you're not the same person I left behind. But I'd like to get to know who we are now. Properly, no rushing, no pressure. Maya studied him, her professional mask completely gone now, revealing the woman who had once known his every dream and fear. So this key, ... is symbolic, Caleb explained. It means I'm not closed off anymore. I'm not running. Whatever happens between us happens with open eyes and open doors. A slow smile spread across Maya's face, the kind that started in her eyes and gradually transformed her entire expression. That might be the most graphic designer explanation of dating I've ever heard. Caleb laughed, the tension breaking. Is that a yes? To dating? Yes, Maya said decisively. To using this key anytime soon, we'll see. I have a very demanding client list, Mr. Morgan, including my parents, Caleb noted. Your parents' case is officially closed, Maya corrected. Happy ending achieved. Which reminds me, she reached into her bag and pulled out an official-looking document. The final judgment. I thought your parents might want to frame it. Caleb accepted the paper, skimming the legal language that officially restored his parents' ownership. "It's really over." "It is," Maya confirmed. Chase took the plea deal. No jail time, but significant community service, financial penalties, and a permanent mark on his professional record. "And Rachel? Legally clear of all wrongdoing," Maya assured him. "The court recognized she was as much a victim of the fraud as your parents." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the afternoon sun filtering through the oak leaves above them. In the distance, the sound of a lawnmower hummed, and somewhere down the street, children laughed as they played. The ordinary sounds of a neighborhood, his neighborhood again. "You know," Maya said thoughtfully, "when you first came back, I thought you were just here to fight for the house. I didn't realize you were fighting for something more important." "What's that?" Caleb asked. "Your place in the family story," she said simply. "Not just the house, but what it represents." Caleb looked toward the craftsman home that had witnessed his entire childhood, the arguments and celebrations, the departures and returns. "I thought I needed to escape it to find myself. Turns out, part of me was here all along." From inside the house came the sound of the back door opening. Lynn Morgan stepped onto the porch, her silver hair catching the sunlight. "Caleb, your father's awake and insisting you both come see what he found in the attic. Something about your old comic book collection being worth a fortune now." Caleb and Maya exchanged amused glances as they rose to join his parents. As they walked toward the house, Caleb felt Maya's hand slip into his small gesture that somehow bridged past and present, creating a possibility for the future he hadn't dared imagine when he first returned to Portland. The Morgan family home stood solid on its foundation, weathered but unbowed by the storm it had endured. Like the family it sheltered, it had proven more resilient than anyone expected, not because of the wood and nails that held it together, but because of the love and memories that gave it meaning. If you've enjoyed this journey with the Morgan family, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our storytelling community. We bring you authentic, emotional stories like this one every week. Plus, share in the comments below. What family heirloom or memory holds special meaning for you? Has a signature or document ever changed the course of your family's history? Your stories inspire our future videos, and we can't wait to connect with all of you wonderful subscribers who make this channel possible. Remember, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us of what truly makes a house a home, not the walls, but the hearts within them.